Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Blaine Monaghan. I am the CEO and president of Pacific Ridge Exploration. Fritz, how are you? Good to see you. We are focused on copper gold projects in BC, and our mission statement is to become BC's leading copper gold exploration company. I took over as CEO in January 2021. At that time, we were a 5-cent stock, had a $1.5 million market cap. We've been very busy since then. We've strengthened the board, strengthened the management team, made additional project acquisitions. Last year was our busiest exploration season ever. This year will be even busier, and that's reflected in the share price appreciation and current market cap. We currently trade around 25 cents and have a market cap of about 30 million. So we've had a busy few years, and I suspect the next few years will be just as busy, if not busier. I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. It is important in the province of BC. All of our projects are located in north central BC and located in a number of nations' traditional territories, and this is a very important part of our future, and we work very closely with our local First Nations partners. Forward-looking statements, I will make many. Why Pacific Ridge? I kind of touched upon it. Our goal is to become BC's leading copper gold exploration company. I'm not going to get into the copper thesis. We all understand it, I'm pretty sure, but one of the other wrinkles here is the increased political, social, environmental risk in South America. This has led to an increased interest in BC porphyry projects. We've benefited from that ourselves. We have optioned one of our projects to Antofagasta, one of the world's largest copper miners. So these are the right projects at the right time in the right jurisdiction. We are seeing the acquisitions, we're seeing the strategic investments, we're seeing the joint ventures, and BC is going to remain very much a focus for seniors looking for geographical diversification. Management and board, I have a long history in mineral exploration, more from the capital market side. I first started in 2001 with a small company called Wheaton River Minerals, which ultimately became Goldcorp, which was subsequently acquired. I've worked with 5 companies that have been subject to M&A and all in the exploration side. I've never worked for a senior miner or a mining company, and I don't want to. I love exploration, I love the thrill of the hunt, and when you make a discovery, the rewards it can create for shareholders. Our management team is headed up by Jerry Carlson, our executive chairman, and Danette Schwab and Paul Jago round out the team. From a corporate governance standpoint, it's quite strong. We have a 5-person board, and it's led by 3 independents. So although I am the CEO, I serve at the behest or leisure of the board, and they help keep us on track. Share structure today, about 108 million shares issued. Our largest shareholders are Crescat, a Denver-based fund, and Delphi, a German fund, and a number of other smaller funds in Canada, in the US, and Europe. We do have one analyst covering us right now, M Partners, who have a target price of 65 cents, which would represent more than a 100% return at the present time. So you can see where our projects are, all north central British Columbia. They're located in what's called the Quesnel Trough, and I'll fast forward here. So the Quesnel Trough is BC's porphyry district. It is really Canada's porphyry district. I mean, it extends all the way from the border in the north to the southern border. It hosts almost all of BC's copper, gold, or copper moly porphyry mines, except for some of the mines that are located in the Stikine terrain. We're at the northern end. We are just south of what was Chemis's open pit mine. There's also the Chemis North project. We're about 50 kilometers south from that. One of the advantages of having the Chemis mine is that the infrastructure is pretty good. There is a road and power. We're just about 5 kilometers off that. We're in the Alpine, so what we do right now, we fly into an area called Johansson Lake, and then we fly up into the Alpine where we set up our camp. So infrastructure is pretty good here. RDP is the project that's optioned out to Antofagasta. So last year we had one camp at Clayul. It was a joint base camp, so we supported the RDP program from Clayul. So a lot of logistical synergies when you have both programs going, a lot of savings. To the south we have our Redton, Chuchi, and Onho, and they're in relatively close proximity to Centerra Gold's Mount Milligan, which is currently producing copper gold porphyry mine. This just gives you a sense of the infrastructure when you're looking at Clyoul. We're looking to the west here. You can see that Ominika Mining Road and Power in the bottom right corner. And then you can see Johansen Lake. So we move our heavy goods up along this road. It's typically open all year round. We stage at Johansen Lake, and then we fly everything up into the Alpine. Lots of reasons why we like Clyoul. You know, Pacific Ridge actually has a long history. It was founded by one of my mentors, John Brock. I'm sure some of you know him. In 1979. Historically, it's had a focus on the Yukon. I joined the board in 2018, and at that time, I think we all decided that early stage gold projects in the Yukon were hard to finance. So we started thinking that perhaps we should look at a different commodity, something a little bit more advanced stage, and perhaps in a different jurisdiction. We were pretty bullish on copper, so we started looking for copper dominant assets. Clyoul rose quickly to the top. You know, it's in BC, it had seen some exploration, it returned some pretty good results, and at the time copper was trading just slightly north of $2, so the acquisition terms were quite reasonable also. So right now we can acquire a 75% interest. We have made the required exploration expenditures, $7.7 million, we've spent 7.5. So we're at the point in time now where we could formalize that joint venture. But what I would rather do is just give Centerra, who we've optioned it from, some additional equity to own it outright, which would give us a lot more flexibility and optionality with the project. Going back to its history, you can see that this project had seen some drilling, about 5,000 meters and 33 holes. Most of it was shallow. The first hole that identified the porphyry potential was drilled in 2006, drilled by Geoinformatics. And that's really what then kind of changed the narrative for this project. And when we acquired it or the option to acquire it in 2020, 33 holes, but only 6 were into the porphyry. We completed our first ever drill program in 2021, 3 holes in 1,500 meters, a pretty small program, but very successful. All the holes intersected significant widths and grades of copper gold porphyry mineralization. That set the stage for a much bigger drill program last year, a 7,000 meter program in 12 holes, and it was the biggest drill program ever at this project. And the real goal of last year's program was to demonstrate its size potential. So the grades, we always felt confident the grades in this sort of environment worked. Then it was always a question of, well, can it be big enough? Can you outline something big enough that could be of interest to seniors? And we're getting there. Last year, we've now outlined a footprint that's about 600 meters by 350 meters to 600 meters in depth. And that will be the goal, again, of this year's program. Fully funded, we'll be looking to drill a similar amount, 7,000 meters at Clyoul, again with the goal to continue growing that footprint. The goal is to outline something that is going to be big enough to attract that M&A activity. Again, this is just probably the most important slide in the deck because it answers a lot of questions. One is the grade. When we compare our higher grade intervals to some of the other deposits and mines out there, similar deposits and mines, you can see that the copper values compare favorably. We have higher gold values, so overall a higher copper equivalent, a higher gold equivalent. The question then is, okay, well that's great, but what about size? And this slide also answers that question. It doesn't tell me how big I think this project could be, but it tells me what I think the minimum it has to be. And I think the minimum it has to be is 250 million tons. I would not be interested in putting out a resource that's smaller than that. I think that's your bare minimum you've got to shoot for here. So what we did last year, the red intervals are the results from last year's program. We made a number of significant step outs. The two most important holes demonstrating its size potential are holes 46, which went directly north across the valley fault, which historically people felt constrained mineralization. We've demonstrated that that is not the case. And then hole 41, which was the east wedge. So that hole 46 to the north pushed out mineralization 250 meters to the north, and the east wedge pushed out mineralization 300 meters to the east. So we significantly expanded the footprint of mineralization, and you can look at, I'm going to go just to this next slide because this is where I think this is what demonstrates the potential best. The results of our MVI seem to be or appear to be closely related to mineralization. So we have a very large footprint here, this MVI footprint, and we've only tested about 15% of it. So you can see there's some very big obvious gaps that need testing. Obviously a lot more drilling to the north, to the south, and that's what we'll be focused on in this year's campaign. And as I mentioned, it is fully funded. We'll be looking to drill about 7,000 meters with the goal of continuing to push out that footprint. But all of the drilling won't be focused at the Cliole main zone. So it's really important that in exploration that you also test other targets. So although I believe Cliole main zone has that size potential and it can continue to grow and get bigger, there are other targets here that have not seen tested or have only seen a hole or two. So last year, in addition to the 7,000 meters at Cliole main zone, we also did an airborne mag survey over a 6-kilometer long mineralized trend and some IP surveys over Ginger and Parish Hill, Bap Ridge, M39. We have identified some additional drill targets. So of that 7,000 meters of drilling next year, you'll see us drill about 4,500 to 5,000 meters at Cliole main zone and 2,000 to 2,500 meters testing some of these other targets. And you know, it's really important not to put your blinders on. My case study for this really is GT Gold. They were having pretty good success at Saddle South. That's what they were initially focused on. And then they ultimately tested a geophysical target to the north called Saddle North. And they had tremendous exploration success there. That's what resulted in almost a 1 billion ton resource and a subsequent takeout by Newmont. So just because you're having success at one target, don't forget that you really should dedicate and allocate some resources to testing new targets that in fact could be as good, if not better. Quickly, RDP, and again, this kind of fits in with the narrative of seniors being interested in BC. We've optioned this to Antofagasta. Now, this wasn't Antofagasta's first choice. They were more interested in Cliole. But because Cliole is our flagship, there really wasn't an opportunity for them to participate. But they're still looking for quality copper assets in BC, so we suggested RDP. So we've optioned that to Antofagasta. They can acquire a 75% interest by spending $8 million and delivering a PEA over 8 years. Last year was the first drill program there since 2011. And one of the holes, they drilled 6 holes in 1,800 meters. This hole here, hole 5, was it was the best hole ever returned from RDP, and it was one of the stronger, or maybe even one of the strongest porphyry intercepts in BC last year. So we're finalizing the work plan and budget for this program right now. We're the operator, Antofagasta is funding it, but it'll probably be a minimum of 1,800 meters up to 2,800 meters. So in addition to the 7,000 meters at Cliole, Antofagasta will be funding an 1,800 meter to 2,800 meter program at RDP, continuing to follow up on these results at Day and testing another target also. Last but not least, Chuchi. I like Chuchi a lot, and I like it because it's actually more advanced stage than Cliole. It's seen a lot more drilling. You know, about 90 holes, but like Cliole again, and like a lot of porphyry exploration in BC, most of the drilling was shallow. So of these 90 holes, the average depth was only 150 meters. But you already have a pretty big footprint of mineralization outlined, you know, about 1.5 by 1.5 kilometers in size. So it's already quite large, but the intervals so far are shorter in length, you know, about 100 to 150 meters, but starting relatively near surface. So the goal of this year's program is to drill deeper, and it's also to test some other targets we identified in last year's ZTEM survey. So for this year, we'll be looking to test or drill about 1,500 meters to 2,000 meters. This will be our first ever drill program at Chuchi. We also are looking at some adjacent ground. We would like to continue to build up Chuchi. I think Chuchi could evolve into an excellent number 2 project. And ultimately, if we continue to have success with Cliole, it could serve as a spin out if something like that were to happen. So we're looking very forward to this year. As I mentioned, when I first came on in 2021, our goal was to become one of BC's leading copper gold exploration companies. We've achieved that. Now the goal is to become BC's leading copper gold exploration company. And with 3 drill programs this year, you know, we might just take that record this year. Thank you.